So welcome to one and all. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience for waiting. As you all know, sometimes in these conferences, sessions take a little longer, lunch takes a little longer, and many people leave after their own session. So yeah, we've got a little less of an audience, but let's make the best of what we have, because we do have a great panel and some great discussions we anticipate. Yeah. So our panel is an intergenerational dialogue on reimagining education for a climate resilient future. So intergenerational, reimagining education, and climate resilient future. Yeah. So I'm Shilpanjali, and I work at Swechha, V for Change Foundation. My colleague, Krishanu, also works there. She takes care of gender and community projects, and I look at school programs with another colleague of mine who isn't here, but you can see him in the photo. That's Aship. Yeah. So we also have the founder of Swechha, Vimlendu, who's on the panel here. So I was always pretty fascinated of this word Swechha, and I'm from the South, so my Hindi isn't very good. So it means swa ichha, by one's own will. Yeah. So Swechha is a leading environmental group. We actively engage both with private and government schools across Delhi NCR. We've been doing it for 20 years now through our various educational programs. Our focus areas include environment, sustainable lifestyles, active citizenship, community engagement, learning journeys, and life skills. We have a farm school in Alwar, which is an organic farm. It's an integrated farm, and it's been designed as an educational and sustainability lab as well. So I'll just take a little while to set a few points before we start the discussion. So, we've been here at the conference. We all know climate events are now the new normal, right? And climate change impacts everybody adversely. So whether it's ecosystems, individuals, communities, economies, all of us are impacted. At least, of course, today, and at least from what we've heard in the conference, we know that education is a critical component in inspiring sustainable choices and driving community action that helps mitigate and adapt to climate change. On the other hand, our education system itself needs to adapt to a lot of things. Today, we are in a world that's transforming rapidly, that's advancing digitally at rapid speed, a world that's sociologically complex, yes, but also incredibly ecologically fragile. If you've just seen the recent news, we've crossed 6 of the 9 planetary thresholds, including climate change and deforestation, biodiversity loss, right? We are also in a world that's very uncertain and turbulent, and what all that means for our society, right? So education, our system needs to be responsive to that. Yeah, can you hear me now? Sorry for that glitch. Yeah. So if we're saying that education must address climate change, environmental degradation, and also resource scarcity, then obviously we must involve various stakeholders. Stakeholders who have different lived experiences, stakeholders who embody different roles, and stakeholders who have varied skills and capacities, right? So with this panel, it is our attempt to bring together voices from different ages and also from different backgrounds, yeah, for a dialogue on how education needs to be reimagined to build a climate resilient future. Yeah. So I'll just introduce the panelists. So we've got very lovely young students from school. One's Khanna and one's Saloni. They're high school students, and they're also heads of their eco clubs. Yeah. And they're doing tremendous work. And you'll get to hear a little from them itself what they do. Yeah? We also have Samarrth, who's pursuing his master's degree but he's a lot of things besides being a master's student. He's an educator, a naturalist, a wildlife photographer. He's been certified in forest and landscape restoration by FAO, and he's been part of such projects, led such projects. We have Vimlendu, who I mentioned earlier, is a founder of Swechha, and who's turned Swechha into one of the most influential organizations on environment and youth matters. He's really been hailed as a youth leader and change maker by various renowned platforms, India Today, Outlook, CNN International, and he was also invited to speak at the UN General Assembly on youth issues. He's also a successful green entrepreneur. He set up Green the Map, which is Swechha's fair trade initiative that produces innovative products from waste material. We have Susan, who's our online participant. She's an educator with extensive experience of 30 years in molding young minds and in making informed choices related to environment, climate change, and sustainability. As head of a school, she designed teaching modules on environment and sustainability for use in classroom teaching. She's presently a Green Campus consultant with the Climate Reality Project and a British Council School ambassador. So she's focused on education practices and the integration of SDGs in curriculum, and she's been awarded for her exceptional work. Last but not least, we have Richard, who has 18 years experience as director of leading international schools and a further 20 years as a leader and educator in the UK and Switzerland. He served on the board of Round Square, chaired the Swiss group of international schools, and also led the Council of International School accreditation teams. He's the founding member of the Villas Institute, a community focused on restoring planetary health and mobilizing intergenerational cooperation. He's also the founder of the education startup Our Futures Group that aims to expand access to high quality education globally and help schools accelerate the world towards a net zero economy. Yeah. So with this, let's start the panel discussion. So we are trying now to have a little activity with all of you to engage the audience as well. And my colleague here, Krishanu, will take the lead on that. Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of moving of height will have to happen to avoid that. So this is also for the panelists. What we'll do now is called throw the word. Okay. Yeah. Acha. Okay. So I'm supposed to. Fine. So we need to use the mic because people are watching it online as well. Yeah, I'll introduce the game again. It's called Throw the Word. Okay. So this is to get a sense for the panelists as well, that what is the mood of the room right now. So we all know what the larger thematic of this panel discussion is, right? Do we know that? Yes, no. Okay. So we know the larger thematic, which is intergenerational dialogue on environmental education, right? So when I say this entire statement, which is intergenerational dialogue on environmental education, then what comes to your mind? And let's take an example from here. Anybody? Any word that comes to your mind when I say that? It doesn't have to be related. It doesn't have to make sense right now. It just is a word that pops in your head. All right, opportunity. So that's how we play the game. You have to just throw the word that comes to you when I talk about environmental education. Let's go. And many words you can repeat or you can say it again.
Curriculum.
Curriculum, okay. And anybody else? From here, this side? Projects. Collaboration. ESG. Anybody else? Anything else? Local issues. Local issues, okay. Crisis is another one. Okay, so now what comes to your mind when I say intergenerational collaboration? Potential, scope, okay, future, technology, innovation, platform, and solution. Yes. Anything else? Facilitation, hope, participation, increasing reach. Okay, lovely. I think this was a great opener because we've had multiple participants come and throw the words at our panelists. And now that we have a sense of what the room is like, and now we have a sense of what is it that the dialogue and the conversation is headed towards, and then possibly we're going to take a second round of this in the end possibly and look at the newer words that have reached our vocabulary when we talk about the same two questions. Over to you, Shilpanshi.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for, participating. It's a little nerve-wracking, I guess, when somebody just asks you to open up, but thank you. So probably the next round, you'll feel more free to do this. Yeah. So there's this word intergenerational, and I must be honest, we used this word, a very basic interpretation of this word to formulate this panel. But we have Richard here, who's worked on intergenerational issues for quite a while, and we ask him to just share a more nuanced and deeper meaning of this.
Thank you very much. I'm actually, before I'm going to speak, I'm going to give an invitation or perhaps an instruction. I would like all the people who are still at secondary school to come and sit in the first couple of rows. And if you're looking around, I don't know whether that's panic or you're not sure whether you're still at school. If you are still at school, come and sit in one of the first two rows, and I'll tell you in a moment why. That includes the volunteers. And in case you're wondering why I'm doing this, there are actually multiple benefits to this. Firstly, I'm a great believer that we talk too much and we don't show enough. And it's often even the very smallest actions make us stop and reflect in ways that listening to wisdom, after a while, the cup is overflowing because we've heard so much wisdom, but there's not room for more intakes. So the reason I've asked you to move is, first of all, it's made you stop and think about where you sit and fit in societies. And I'm really pleased that when I said people who are still in schools, there are also teachers who get up, because there is we tend to think of generations by age bands. And we need to get away from this notion that there are these age bands. One of the things that struck me at this wonderful conference, I've loved it, I've made some great conversations. I've had some great conversations with some very smart people, but my best conversations have been with young people who are doing new and different things. And what I'd love to see in the remaining time of this conference is not so many adults talking to adults and not so many young people talking to themselves or consulting their phone for wisdom. Take these opportunities because it's a two-way learning thing. That's all I'm going to say, because actions are more than words.
Sorry, please continue. Sorry, okay.
Time for somebody else.
Yeah, okay. So I hope that sort of got you thinking about what intergenerational means and how we can probably, take this forward while we teach, while we work with communities. Yeah. So let's hear from our panelists now. Yeah. So can I have the, Krishna, can I have the mic? So as a beginning, can you hear me on the mic? So as a beginning, let's start by asking each of the panelists to share an example of probably the most significant thing that they have done as part of their work. And while they do that, and while they also look at answer the following questions, we want them and y'all to keep these three questions in mind. Yeah. So these are the three overarching questions for this panel. How can we accelerate and embed meaningfully learning on sustainability and climate change within our education system. How can we accelerate and embed meaningfully? Yeah, learning on sustainability and climate change within our education system. The second is, how can we make education for sustainable development and climate resilience more relevant to the daily lives or to the lived experiences of individuals? How can we empower young people to apply what they learn on sustainability and climate by way of making sustainable choices in their lives and initiating or driving community action? So we hope the panelists keep these in mind and we move on. So yeah, the one thing that you would like to share about your work that's been meaningful. So let's start with Khanna.
The mic is it working? Okay. First of all, thank you everyone for having me. It's a great opportunity to be sitting among such great panelists. As our Eco Club, we have done a lot of things, but the one that stands out the most to me is we set up a stall at one of our school's annual events. Now, I know it might seem very small and a very not major initiative, but I think it was very special for us because it was it's like a culmination of different ideas and initiatives. We all sat down together, we put in what we think, and it's something great turned out. So with this, we aim to reach out to a large audience, which included students and grown-ups also. So we had to keep that in mind while preparing this stall. So if I give a rundown of what happened. So for students, we had set up like a DIY corner where they could make their own potted planters from reused water bottles. And we also gave away coconut shells as planters. But if we move a little ahead in the age group, we also we had eco bricks. We collected plastic from all over school, and we actually sat down as a team and made eco bricks. And we used so much of plastic, and from those we made stools and tables, and we displayed it on our stall. And some of us even made bioenzymes, which we explained it to whosoever came to our stall. So apart from that, we also had a signature campaign and promoted our social media handle, and it became like a buzz of the event. And so many people visited the stall, which makes it so special. And we were able to reach out to a much larger audience out there. So that's what I think is one of the major initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khanna. So we just take it forward to Saloni. So Saloni, आप क्या सोचते हैं कि आपका सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट या सिग्निफिकेंट काम जो आपको शायद बहुत मीनिंगफुल है, 2 मिनट में आप बता पाएंगे कि आपने
A very warm good morning, first of all. My name is Saloni, as I introduced already by my ma'am. So before starting, I want from you what you understand from Eco Club. Anyone?
Anyone wants to share what they understand by Eco Club? Anybody else?
Should I repeat it?
Should she repeat?
Yeah, please.
Eco Club is a group of students and volunteers when they come together to work towards conserving the environment at their school level or university level.
Yeah, it's right. I am concluding that Eco Club, it is basically a club which helps for environment, which is for environment. We are doing many activities in that Eco Club. Likewise, in our school, in all over Delhi's government school, schools are going to be make a Eco Club. And in that only, we have taken many initiatives. We have made our school green. Because of that, we get a green award. And we have made a kitchen garden also with a biodegradable compost. We have done a lot of experiments. We have made a model. We motivate students to come and participate in that environmental activities. Like we have made a model on eco-friendly toilet van, which is basically a model which tackle the problem of open defecation and the sewage disposal, especially in rural areas. It is very, very sufficient and very, very helpful for rural peoples. People can go and use that toilet van easily. That thing.
Thank you very much. Pretty inspiring from both of them at that young age of 16, 17 to take that leadership position, motivate students, work with communities and get this going. Yeah. So let's move to Samarrth. So can you share what's been most significant to you?
Yeah. So the most significant thing or the learning which happened as aimed to be a learning process, certainly, but it turned out to be even more surprising, was something which I did for one of the Delhi public schools in the NCR. So we led a team of close to 180 students to a place known as the Ranthambore National Park. And it has now become a signature camp. It's known as the Ranthambore Beyond Tigers, as I would like to call. So we took children from class 6 to 8th, right? My favorite batch to work with, right? So we took children from class 6 to 8 to the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve. And the idea was to make them explore and moreover give them a nice exposure of things, what it means to be in the wild. And being a nature lover myself, right, the focus was on nature, but of course the opportunities, the challenges and the communities which surround the tigers was another aim. We did not tell them this, right? We just made sure that they are exposed. And the trip lasted for close to 3 days, right? The children had a spectacular sighting of a beautiful tigress, with its cubs, and the raptors and egrets flying around, plants blooming and roots swinging, right? But at the same time, when they went to this village of Savai Madhupur, they started interacting with the village girls, right? And they belong to a particular community which has dependent over the years on poaching. And you won't believe, right? When I talk about a particular school, I'm talking about a particular class which can afford that school. So these girls go and ask these girls in Savai Madhupur, sitting in a computer center, which is run by the tourist, right? As soon as the door of the tourist, that computer center was opened, a mongoose jumped out there. Well, that's Ranthambore, right? The computer centers are equally full of wildlife, right? But and the roof a bit leaky, a bit grassy here and there, and you won't believe the reply of the girl. So the girl from DPS asked her, right, what's the challenge that you face? A nice diplomatic question, right? And the response was quite amazing. And that girl from Ranthambore very modest said, the fact that we have a computer center run by tourists because of the tiger, we are very grateful. We don't have any problem. We have people living in the farthest part of the country, remote, ecologically very rich, facility-wise very deprived, but still satisfied, which people don't know how to teach. That was one of the ways we could teach at least a few group of children in one of the schools in NCR. So I feel that when we look at environmental education, not just as an experience, but a life skill, right? That is something which changes things in and out. So that was my one of the best experience which I could feel and I wanted to share.
Thank you very much. Working with students, getting them to experience something, not just from a very narrow resource point of view, but also the larger questions, of values, of what it means to be satisfied with all of our other challenges. So I think that's amazing. Thank you. So let's move to Vimlendu. Would you like to share a little bit about your journey?
Okay. I think the question was, can you hear me? Is it better? Yeah. How has the journey been last 20 years and what's the best that has happened so far? For me, from my professional experience, I think I'm still waiting for the best to happen. So to really say that let's celebrate something that I've done, I think I'm still waiting for that moment. There's very little work that has happened. There's a lot that is left to be done. And that's what my work is, to really look at future not just of this planet, but also of the work that we're doing. In terms of also looking at how has last 20 years of my work, personal journey has been, and therefore what should it actually be going forward, given in the space of environment education. I think it's high time that we actually move beyond, we start looking at the word education. Sometimes the word education is very, very it doesn't sound that great. It's a very, it talks about power, it talks about system, it talks about a box, it talks about a whiteboard or a blackboard or a green board. It talks about transaction of knowledge. And I think what is needed in the space of environment right now, or for our planet, is not just education, or perhaps sometimes not even education, because there's enough of education that has already happened. I think what we need is practice. So therefore, for me, based on my work last 20 years, which is incomplete, and my work that I imagine doing for the next at least 70, 80 years or 100 years more that I live, to work more on practice and make practice part of education and not make education the sole goal of environmentalism.
Thank you for that. And we can all give testimonials of how much he focuses on practice while at Swechha. So yeah, it's a great journey being there. So Susan, can you hear us?
She's on mute.
Are you on mute,
Yes,
Susan?
she's on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute. So
Yeah, can you hear me now?
yes, we can hear you now. Sorry about that long wait. I hope you've been able to hear what the participants said.
Yes,
So
I did.
Yeah, the question for you also, if you could share maybe one significant thing in about 2 minutes or so of your whole journey, professional, personal, that's made an impact on you.
Yeah. I was looking after a relatively new school, and so I was able to actually, in a short span of time, I think something that gives me a lot of what I did as meaningful work, if you could call it, was framing of a green policy in the school, where so that all the stakeholders, be it the students, the parents, the teachers, all of them could get together, and it was put into the almanac so that everyone followed it. And how did we achieve that? We actually got the help of, we did a collaborative effort with NGOs like Swechha, the Climate Reality Project, which had a Green Campus program, which helped us to audit our systems as well as train our teachers. I think in all of this, the attitude of the teachers, the skill of the teachers needs to be enhanced first if you want education and all these changes to be brought about. Unless they walk the talk, the students and the entire community will not be there. But so I think the most significant thing in the work that I can recall now is the Gold Starring Award that the school got for its green campus. We had solar panels, we had grey water recycling, and we also had the waste segregation things done in place. And from the lower classes, there was quite, I wouldn't say 100%. It is not possible to have the 100% just now, but I'm sure with young leaders like how you have on the panel, I'm sure we will reach there someday. As Vimlendu said, miles to go to reach there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And you all must have been some of the first schools, I think, to take up this initiative. You all must have been one of the schools.
I can't hear you.
Oh,
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you all must have been one of the first schools, the pioneer schools taking up something like this, right?
Yeah, there were other schools as well. 4 or 5 schools we were. Yeah.
Right. So that
We
means a
did.
lot of passion.
Actually, it was like a very effective transformative catalyst, because it helped to inculcate values as well as bring about small changes. Behavioral changes need to come about in the lower ages itself, right from your pre-primary and primary, and as they go up, then it becomes a part of their lifestyle itself. And that is why, I mean, I particularly enjoyed, I'm not saying Swechha because I've worked a lot with Swechha on their projects that we've done together, whether it's upcycling, whether it is visiting a community, whether it is when children have these experiential learning, it makes an impression on them. And as these children just now shared about the eco clubs, these are all, I think many of the Delhi schools still do that, these kind of things that we are doing. And and we need to celebrate these young ones, these local heroes who are doing small innovations. We need to celebrate them as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So we just move on to Richard. Richard, anything you would like to share with us?
Yes, it's always the hardest thing in a way when you've spoken after other people, because lots of great things have been said. So I'll try and fill what I think is a very important space, which I I think we haven't heard enough of, and that is that we don't do the things we need to do because we know we need to do them. We do them because we care. And my question really to schools is, are we doing enough to engage the emotional young person? And I'm seeing some young faces shaking their heads. Are we doing enough to nurture the emotional beings so that they are motivated, excited, optimistic, have a real sense of their ability to be transformational, and that their little difference will make a difference? We must engage young people emotionally. Here we are, we're requiring people to turn their listening brain on to 10 for 2 days, but we're actually dialing back their emotions while we do that, which is why the conversations, the intergenerational conversations, become important, because those will build inspiration. Inspiration is not driven by knowing a lot of stuff. That helps, and it helps us build our arguments. And I'm not trying to do away with the value of curriculum content or the value of research and all of the science that underpins what we're doing. But until we engage the heart and the spirit, however we may choose to determine that, we will not turn on the gas taps. We'll have a lot of very compliant young people who know it matters, but actually they won't be hitting the start button. And that's where we need to get. So my call out really is, from my experience, is engage the emotions if you want to have transformational behaviors.
Thank you so much for that. That's so true. Yeah, a lot of us who are in this space and who continue to be in this space, whatever the challenges are, is because of passion. There'll be ups and downs, but there always needs to be that passion. And sometimes it's very difficult, which I'm sure all of y'all can attest to. Studies while leading the Eco Club, a master's degree, but doing something that you're passionate about, and all of the others who have startups and NGOs. So yeah, that's really the key. So let's move on to some more questions. Are there any questions from the audience at this point? Anything you want to ask? Yes, please.
So this is more of an existential crisis question that I'm facing. So I'm studying sustainable development, and what I see is that in the larger narrative, ecology is given very less importance. Environment maybe, but ecology very less. So the only time it comes up is, say, public health or ecosystem services, right? So, you know, how can we work at these intersections? And my second question is that I was, you know, working, and we were going to schools, and we were giving presentations on sustainability. So the lower class, the lower income students, or the teachers even, it wasn't their priority to, you know or even learn about sustainability, because basic needs are more. Any thoughts?
So you have two questions. So can I ask Vimlendu to do the first one? Yeah,
Okay,
maybe the focus on ecology is a bit less. So obviously we have climate education, education for sustainable development, environment education. It's all really muddled up. So she's saying that the focus on ecology is probably not as much. Just to draw
See,
that.
first of all, we need to, I think the problem with our education system, and not just with our education system, with our society, is that we don't look at the bigger picture. You would look at an event, the temperature outside, and you will only focus on today's temperature, but you'll not look at a trend, or you look at the larger reasons why the temperature is what it is today. So if it's 38 degrees or 40 degrees, or how come there was, you know, in Shimla, some of my friends were putting photos from Shimla from last week, when they were having a great time, having a, you know, a vacation. And just 15 days ago, there were these images of Shimla completely being washed out and people dying. We talk about hundreds and thousands of people actually lost their homes. And just 2 months before that, they were also the same set of friends or people from the same place called Shimla were actually sharing photos of heat wave. So heat wave to extreme flood to looking at today's time and as if nothing has happened. Of course, there's a rain deficit. What happens is that in our education and in our life, a lot of times we look at environment as a very, very immediate, short-term perspective, while ecology is something more deeper and it has to be more nuanced, it has to be more granular, and we don't have time for it. Right now, of course, we've had G20 that has happened, in our country. So many things that keep happening where we do not want to prioritize because we think that thinking about ecology is at the cost of development. So the biggest challenge that is there, this word called sustainable development was supposed to be a good phenomena. We were talking about a balance, but how can there be a balance between how much crime is too much crime and how do we save the planet? Because right now the battle that the planet is actually facing, or what we're facing, is that we need to de-develop rather than develop newly. Right now, when you look at Yamuna, for example, and sorry, I'm giving a longer answer, but just it's a very important perspective that when we look at how there's so much flood, we had an unprecedented floods in the river this couple of months ago, people who live here in Delhi. And we think it happened because it rained a lot in this year. It's very easy to blame climate change and extreme rain for the floods that actually happened. If you've actually built 25 bridges and flyovers on the river, if you've actually built these fancy, that G20 summit venue is in the wetland. When your wetland is constructed upon, when you have Delhi Secretariat that is built on floodplains, when you have metro shed built on floodplains, when flood happens, where does the flood go? The flood, if you take away the flood cushion, that is not called sustainable development. In the garb of sustainable development, you can't be actually building construction and give it a green certificate and say, well, amazing. Are you feeling cold right now? A little bit? Because I am. Because I am feeling a little cold right now. And that is where, imagine we talk about sustainability, both the doors are closed and it's 23 degrees right now. But we are actually, AC is on and we are discussing, we had an amazing, food in plastic plates. Let's discuss sustainability. That's the problem. That's the crux of the problem. That Kathni and Karni, you understand the difference between the two? Kathni is what you say and Karni is what you do. There's a fundamental problem and gap in what you say and what you do amongst people like us as well. I'm not excluded. I also have many double standards that I'm really, really ashamed of, but that has to change.
I'm sure you've got a lot of food for thought. Okay, someone could just take the question on access, people in vulnerable communities.
When it comes to vulnerable communities and especially the people who are deprived of resources and the access to some of the best level of education or the best level of exposures, one needs to see that what's going on behind the scenes, right? So in my experience with working with these schools, especially the schools in the rural areas, right, has been that certainly the teachers have their own apprehensions. And the fact is that if you look at the list of priorities of a poor man, right, the environment and the wildlife might not be in the first 20, right? Because for him, it is not a part of list to do, but it is his part of life, right? So it might not be in the list, but that is something on which he or she clearly depends. Right? So what I do realize is that they are certainly not very well exposed, right? But the level of understanding of environment is much, much more than any one of us. They are much more rooted than us, right? They're much more considerate than us, and they much more feel than us, right? It's very easy, as Sir just said, to sit in a temperature controlled room. They are the ones who don't have the capacity, right? If you ask them, aaj zyada garmi thi, kal zyada garmi hogi, they may give an answer ki, they can literally say you the trend which the Sir just said of 15 years, abhi aisa tha, ab aisa waise. Go to any school, they travel in an AC bus, right? If the AC bus is missed, they have an air conditioner Ola, which again comes on a call of an app, right? So for me, that is, yes, a big problem, right? But they're certainly not missing on to anything. It's the people who are sitting in good places who are missing on the brutalities of nature. That is something which is the need of the hour. And of course, there needs to be a constant effort to make sure that they are equally accessible to various forms of environmental education, be it ecology. And in fact, they should be one who should be the educators in days to come. They are the better storytellers and they're the ones who have faced it themselves. Let them be the ones who communicate the change and the process of change.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's get on to another round of questions and we start with the young ladies. Yeah. So Khanna, you're obviously a nature enthusiast and you've studied EVS for a while now. So in this journey, has there been any content or ways of learning that has made the most impression on you, but also another person from your age group who probably wasn't as inclined towards the environment? Yeah. And is there something that we should be doing more deeply?
So yes, I agree that environmental education is really important. And you talked about EVS, ma'am. So I did pick up a few things from EVS, but I feel that it's not enough. The textual content is not enough. It might be present in tidbits here and there in our curriculum in form of geography or science. But when we're looking at something as large as conservation, so just knowledge of it won't be enough. For me and my peers, I feel like when we interacted with environmentalists in our school and when we talk to people who know the real picture, I think that was something that was eye-opening for us because it kind of gave us a glimpse of what the actual situation is and what the risks and the potential problems can be. And it also helped us stand on our toes and look at the number of solutions that we can have. So I remember that whenever we used to have a session, I used to come out and I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that this problem was actually a crisis. So I think this was something more impactful for me. And as I said, textual knowledge is necessary, but it is not sufficient. So what could be made better is more hands-on learning and experience for children. You can take them out on field excursions. You can take them out for seeing how the community actually looks like, so that they get a better overview of what they're dealing with, and that will also help with problem solving for them, which is actually, I think, the most important thing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. So Saloni, in your Eco Club, is there any other support that you would like? Eco Club were there things that you want to do but couldn't do for some reason, and how could we all support you doing that?
So अगर हमें इको क्लब को बढ़ाना है तो उसके लिए हमें सबसे पहले एकेडमिक से हेल्प लेनी होगी. हमारे करिकुलम में, एज वी ऑल नो, हमारे स्कूल्स में मल्टीपल एक्टिविटीज एट वन टाइम चलता है. जैसे कि एक ही टाइम पे बहुत सारे एक्टिविटीज हो रही हैं. लाइक अभी हिंदी पखवाड़ा वाला एक्टिविटी हुआ, उसके बाद पोस्टर मेकिंग, स्लोगन राइटिंग. देयर आर टू मेनी एक्टिविटीज गोइंग ऑन वन टाइम ओनली. तो हमें उसको थोड़ा सा रिड्यूस करना होगा. मतलब कि इको क्लब से रिलेटेड हम बहुत अच्छा काम कर सकते हैं अगर हमारे एकेडमिक से थोड़ा सा सपोर्ट मिले. तो अगर हमारे बुक्स में हल्का सा जो भी इन्वायरमेंट से रिलेटेड है, अगर एक ही जगह सब कुछ लिखा हुआ हो, दैट विल हेल्प अस अ लॉट. जैसे कि कनक ने भी बताया कि कुछ पोर्शन साइंस में है, कुछ पोर्शन ज्योग्राफी में है. दैट डिफिकल्ट टू अंडरस्टैंड, टू रीड. कोई ज्योग्राफी, किसी का इंटरेस्ट ज्योग्राफी में होता है, किसी का इंटरेस्ट साइंस में होता है. सो ईवीएस इज नेसेसरी कि ईवीएस एज अ एनवायरमेंटल स्टडीज एक प्रॉपर टेक्स्ट बुक बने और इसके बाद इसके साथ थ्योरेटिकल को एक्सपेरिमेंट करा जाए. थ्योरी को हम अगर एक्सपेरिमेंट में लाएं, दैट विल बी वेरी वेरी हेल्पफुल. अगर हम खुद एक और एक्टिविटीज अगर ला रहे हैं जो कि इन्वायरमेंट से रिलेटेड हो, जैसे अगर हम नुक्कड़ नाटक और पोस्टर मेकिंग अगर हम इससे रिलेटेड भी लाएं तो हमारा दोनों काम होगा. मल्टीपल एक्टिविटीज, जैसे पोस्टर मेकिंग मल्टीपल टाइम पे हो रहा है बट ऑन टॉपिक ऑन एनवायरमेंट, दैट विल हेल्प टू अवेयर द चिल्ड्रंस ऑन एनवायरमेंट ऑल्सो. तो हमारा दोनों काम एक ही साथ होगा. देन व्हाई शुड वी नॉट? सो आई रिक्वेस्ट कि एकेडमिक से हल्का हेल्प मिले हमें, तो हम ये काम बहुत अच्छे से कर सके.
Thank you. That's really interesting points you all have raised. So Susan, can I get you to comment on this? So we all know that,
Yeah.
I think after a certain grade, EVS is covered as part of science and social sciences separately.
Yeah, I
components.
loved listening to the two of them.
Yeah.
Saloni did say very emphatically that she wanted environment education as a subject. I, for one, don't go with it because I think it should be embedded in all the subjects. Why not talk about experiences, stories about environmentalists, different conservationists in your English, in your Hindi, in your Sanskrit, have it in all of them. And your curriculum, I think the NCF 2023, which has just come out, very clearly states, gives an ample lot of scope for teachers to design it in that manner. So I would put it down to the teachers to design activity. It has to be a development of skills. Knowledge is there. In the textbooks, your geography and science, spread it across, make it interdisciplinary, make it project-based. And I think your green institutions and schools and colleges should collaborate with each other so that projects at least and let the children maintain a portfolio so that you can find out then what are the skills that you are developing. See, the NCF has already come out for the foundational years. And what are the skills that are required? Make it simple, cut it down. Waste segregation, what are the different skills that you need? Transportation, what are the different skills that you expect in the child to have? If it is energy conservation, so that the child will practice those skills at home also. That way the community also gets educated and will change their lifestyle and behavior. So I do think that change has to come right from the school itself, where the teachers have to change this. They have to walk the talk. Environment education or sustainability education has to be a part of the ethos of the school, has to be in all subjects. Treating it as a separate subject makes it just mark-oriented. Let's not make it mark-oriented. We need it to be skill-based so that those kind of skills, how do they collect? How can they stand up for the right thing? What is for climate justice? How is it that they can stand up for that? What is right? What is wrong? How can they finding solutions and all, maybe only in the higher classes they will get. But unless they have, like he said about emotional attachment to nature, that you can do in your foundational years, where the children play with dirt and get that affinity to nature. The minute they love something, then this thing will grow. And the teachers need to identify what are the skills at each class that they're looking at, and let the child develop a portfolio. What are the projects that she did? Did she segregate the waste at home? Did she make sure that she did not use any single-use plastics? Can she give us an evidence of that? So when that portfolio grows, then you know what kind of skill the child has done over a period of time. So I do feel the way in which environment education or sustainability education has to be done has to be much more project-based and experiential.
Experience, right. Richard, do you want to get onto that? I mean, the students are saying it seems a little fragmented. So how do they get a sense of being embedded?
I think embedding in schools in a way that you can embed but have no impact. And you can embed things and they have impact, but they only have impact if the students who are learning them feel or experience the relevance of it. If they think this is just another thing they have to do. So I think we need to work a lot on relevance. And I'm actually, again, I'm going to be a bit disruptive because it's a bit my style. I'm going to seize this opportunity because we're here for an intergenerational dialogue. I would like to ask some questions from here into the audience. And part of the reason I ask people to come nearer the front is so I can see them. But I would actually like to turn this question to these two young ladies here. What would be the magic that would lift what you study and know about? What would make the magic in the school that makes you really excited about it and impelled into transformational action?
Hi, I've talked to you earlier also, and I'll say the same thing. To me, education about sustainability and environment depends not just on learning, but doing field work, as I said, to actually include us on the field and make us do things, as she said, in an eco club and their clubs, what they do to include everyone and teach everyone and make them do things to save the environment.
That's great. And what do you think? And it can't be the same as her. Well, it can, but see, what can you add to that?
I also feel the same. But I also think doing things practical makes it more um, better learning. So there should be in schools also there should be some things for children that should impact that should really make an impact on them. Not only we are studying theory and no practical. So I think we should do something in schools also for them.
That's great. And one just last question while you've still got that mic and you're still hot and you're in control of the room. Do you think you could be a more impactful teacher of the younger years than adults? Could you potentially be a better way of transmitting messages around this is important than your teachers?
Can I just explain that? So what he's saying is, so suppose you have to take the message out to your peer group or even your teachers and your parents and your communities. Do you think at this moment you could do it better than probably some of us older people are doing it? Because you are living this experience in school. So.
Not really, but I guess yes, because we are the youth and we have more capabilities to actually do things. Because I have an example. I teach my mother to save water because she wastes a lot of water in doing household chores and all things. So I tell her daily, Mama, save water, save water. It's very essential for us to save water. I teach her to little bit things because parents are not well educated than us. So that's I include these things in my daily lives to save things, save water, remove plastics. So yes, maybe we can do things a little more practically than just theory.
Thank you. And if I can just close on that point, I think what you've shown very well is how the power of your personal example as young people who are doing things and making it cool to do this stuff may be much more transformational than instructing one generation after another of young people. Don't underestimate your power to go back into your families or into your school and be actually the really effective transmitter. You can be very, very powerful. And that, I believe, is the power of intergenerational dialogue. It's not just between old people, middle people, and young people. It's you and somebody who's 5 years younger. That's an intergenerational dialogue, and it can be very powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you for answering and taking the opportunity. So in this way, let's just go to Samarrth. You're pursuing a master's course. So do you think that, they're geared to impart the knowledge and skills that you need if you want to develop a career here? And the other question I have is, so if people are not studying a master's course to get into the environment, sustainable development, climate domain, then how are these courses fostering environmental awareness? Do you think it's enough or not?
Okay. So let me put it this way. So the way we look at the whole domain of environment, environmentalism, environment education, in it itself is very incomplete. Right. But this is something really amazing, which I go through every day when I go back to TERI School of Advanced Studies, a very disruptive way of looking at things. Right. So you see that at one point of time, I'm looking into biodiversity conservation. At the same time, I'm studying renewable energy mechanisms. And at the third time, I'm also studying about globalization, resource politics, right? And what shifts the resource mechanisms right? With the social structure of a society, what's coming through. And I think that's the way to look at environmental education, right? So the fact that we actually download information onto students in the name of environmental education, but we need to equip them with the right weapons. And the weapon here is to how do you use this education, right? So I spend a lot of time in the office of bureaucrats, right? And the moment I start saying them, we need to look after herbivores, we need to look after frugivores, so that the carnivores can be like, ecologist aa gaya, hatao, right? But the moment I communicate in their language, we need to save something so that your city is sustainable. The people need to be saved. And for them to be saved, we need to save the biodiversity and wildlife in a certain way. So communicating your learnings is something, again, which is supposed to be taught. But how often do we teach that, right? So I find my course, at least TERI School of Advanced Studies, to be really amazing because it equips me with the fact that how can I strategically use my knowledge? It's not there in my database anymore. It's on my hands and fingers to use it out in the world for the benefit of people. Another way is the narrative which our environmental education has. At times of it, it's very depressing. If you don't save, everything will be gone. If you don't save, devastation. If you don't save this, it's so depressing for a child. Agar sab kuch khatam hi hona hai, so what do we do? Why are we making young people so hopeless? Of course, we need to be realistic about it, but we can also be a little hopeful and practical about it. Yes, if we do it timely action, there is scope for us. And that scope can also be an entrepreneurship journey. That can be somewhere where we have jobs for ourselves, right? So we need to look at how do we put narrative onto that. So I feel that's where the scope for other students also come in who are maybe not pursuing a particular course which is meant to be serving a green job or a master's of environmental sciences. Suppose there's someone else looking into masters in communication for that matter. Look at the journalist and the way the climate change is reported in the world. We need good climate journalists to be there. Look at the way what's happening in the courts of the country when it comes to the forest and the tribals. We need good lawyers and good judges at the same time who understand environment. And when we look at the entrepreneurs and the biggest corporates of the world, right, they're again orienting themselves to the idea of sustainability. ESG is driving them. But how much of it is ESG and how much of it is greenwashing? Right, that is something which again gives a lot of scope to all of us, maybe, right? So maybe the young people over here, in whatever they may do, there is scope. But how do we drive that is a big question. The answer to that partly lies in the ways of integrating subjects, right? If someone is supposed to be loving, so I'm like very enthusiastic about wildlife, but at the same time I have the freedom to choose courses which affect life, right? Accounting and finance for sustainability. Courses like that do exist, which I study along with studying about the mammals and the birds and the flora and fauna. And that really impacts. Right? So the fact that we look at environmental education in a holistic manner and we start teaching it and experiencing it. So not teaching, rather, in fact, experiencing it. And why do I say so is that, every year in the month of April, schools ring me up, environmental education. And the best thing that they can do is give a holiday homework and write an essay on how to save environment. And that's the most boring thing for a child to write a paragraph on how to save environment.
Since you have done that? Yes. Yes.
Second thing, I've been asked to make a model of an environmental city and it's a thermocol model. Right. So that is something, right? But if you look at the ways like what we did in Ranthambore Beyond Tigers or what we have done in TERI School of Advanced Studies, we literally spent a week in Sikkim, working with the Sikkim Forest Department, with the tribals in Sikkim, right? Understanding, learning from the forest and giving our learnings back to the forest and understanding a dialogue. Hey, can the global policies on the forest, the national policies on the forest, and the requirement of the state and the national security, is there a way they can be brought on a platform? That was something which we did. And you look at it, it was a part of a course. But if you look at the subjects which got covered here in a live project, it's immense, right? So summing it up very quickly, we need to look at environmental education beyond the names of the trees and the birds, right? But also at the same time, how do you govern your knowledge? How do you strategically put it so that it matches and gets the stream and it reaches where it is intended to reach, right? And I think that's where even the mission life gets included, right? You first integrate it in yourself and then you become an ambassador to drive the change. So I hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you. So, moving on to maybe then an overarching framework, Vimlendu, you've been really an informed observer of how environmental education in India has evolved. So, what are the pillars of a value-adding learning framework that may guide education for sustainable development? And where do you think we are right now, also with the new NEP and the new NCF 2023? So where we are right now, and what are the pillars do you think sort of form this, and so that we are not just ticking those boxes, that we can really add value?
Keep it to keep it less technical. I think a lot of my learning actually comes from some of the educators who were there in the room. Nita is there, Susan ma'am, Madhu ma'am just left. When we talk about what should we be doing tomorrow, let's look at what best has actually happened in the space of environment education in our country in the last couple of decades. As much as you all talked about how there was a how to save this planet essay that everyone had to write, or get into a painting competition every year about World Environment Day, and at best you planted a tree and which you didn't really know whether it survived or not, or that planning a city on a thermocol. There are practitioners who went beyond the mandate of the law, or for example, if there's a policy that tells you to do EVS versus practitioners, many of them who are here right now, and some of them have been my inspiration and heroes. They did it differently. They did not do it because it was actually mandated to them. Neither what the work that you've been doing for 20 or more years, 20 years is what I've known you, or what Madhu ma'am has been doing for more than 20, 30 years. It wasn't mandated by the government. I think that's where I think environment education needs to get into, and some people, what children also need to start demanding is that you should be doing things not because you ought to be doing it or you were asked to do it. There's an environment period, and therefore you should learn something about environment. That cannot be the approach. And that's what happens, is that when you end up making something as which is important, mandatory things are important, because that's how do you run a country, how do you run a policy framework or an education framework. For that, you will have to create a framework. You'll have to really, you can't keep it voluntary. You can't have so many great educators, heroes in every school, and therefore you need to really create a platform. But somewhere I think what everyone has been talking about, and based on the observation and best practices of many of these practitioners that I just told you who are my heroes, practice-based education. What Richard was talking about, contextual education, as in, interestingly, historically in India, environment, or in fact, for that matter, history and geography was always taught in the vernacular language. And the reason why history and geography were always taught in the vernacular was that it's more important for you to know the soil type where you live than the soil type of Switzerland. Or before I know what is happening at the North Pole, I should know what is happening in my backyard. So education, yes, important, fancy books, you can crack any exam, learn about climate change and glaciers and melting of everything. But if you do not know what is happening in your own backyard, or where your waste is going, or how what Delhi is facing, or whatever. So contextual, practical, holistic, futuristic. And by the way, the word intergenerational, I do not know, as in, of course, it's a Swechha panel discussion. But word intergenerational actually is about looking at resources, and looking at resources from the lens of equity. Intergenerational largely means that how much resource should I actually consume so that there's enough that is left for the next generation. And that is what is the actual technical scientific understanding of the word intergenerational, or understanding of so when you say intergenerational coal, that means that how much coal can I use today so that there's enough coal for you. As one is, don't use coal, but for that matter, I would say intergenerational water, or intergenerational forest, or intergenerational energy. And I think in that context, education needs to be contextual and intergenerational, not in terms of elderly teaching the bachas or bachas, whatever, from the resource point of view. The reason why we need to study our planet or love our planet or respect our planet is for the stress or strain or limitations that our resources have. And that's why education has to be contextual, has to be intergenerational.
Thank you very much. Do we want to open do you have any questions? Would like to open it up to the audience? Anybody?
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
That's the hero ma'am that I was telling you about. She's been my inspiration for 20 years.
Yeah, Vimlendu and myself and Susan, I wish she was here.
She's there.
She's there, Susan, yeah, can you see me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can see me. So yeah, so I like the crowd over here. And what I've been noticing, it's all the young blood which is here. So I really like it. So let me share my energy to you. And this is what you need to go back. Can I come in front so then you can see? So most of you in school, college, you need to go and talk to your principal, whoever's your educator. All right. Now don't think that some teacher is going to be a super teacher who will come and teach you and then only you will learn. Hello, you are all with the phone and you have all the knowledge over there. So if you have it in you, you will go and find the answer. You don't need hand holding. None of you need hand holding. You don't need it. The world is full of knowledge and we have it. Whether you want to do it or not is your wish. You have to decide. But I always feel, and Vimlendu will say yes to me, even Susan, you want to be an environmentalist, first learn to handle your own waste. If there's kachra going out from your waste for somebody else to handle it for you, then hello, you're just a paper puppet, that's all. You can't. So you start at home with your own waste and see how well you can segregate it, how well you can handle it, and how well you can reuse it, recycle it. So rethink about what you're doing. If you can do it, then take the next step, right? Otherwise, go and read the books. You have all the information. That's not enough. So that is what is. You have to believe in what you want to do. If you do not have the attitude, you can't do anything, right? Right? So when I started, I learned it with experience. So I had a laboratory. I was telling you, like you have a physics, chemistry, biology lab. You need a space. It can be a room. It can be a shed. Just because I'm saying a shed, because in case it rains, you still continue with your work. You can keep your thing. But you need to build something where you can start like a experimental. You're talking about experimenting, laboratory and all that. It doesn't have to have something, pipettes and glasswares in it. It can be a plastic bottle or something like that. So you need to think. You have to be innovative. You can make your own lab. Start it. Just go to your principal and tell them we just need a space. And you build from there. So I built from my bins, the dustbins. All right. So I got 3 bins. And my concept is very clear. Not going to spend a single paisa, no money to build my thing. So I started from scratch. And the 3 thing is what? Green, nature, all the biodegradable. We use a blue ink, right? So the paper goes over there. It's a biodegradable because it's processed, so it takes time. So it goes over there. And lal mane khatra. Red means warning. Red light means warning. Lal mane khatra, all the non-biodegradable. So I started like that. And Vimlendu came to me and he spoke to Mr. Ishwar and he says, he had a boy, Ravi, who was into substances and he was recovering from that. He says he needs a place and he needs some sort of a job. So the blue was given to Ravi. Blue means we used to lift paper from paper. So that means now in a school where you have chart paper, you keep the chart paper, you put all your work over there. It stays only for a week or at the most 1 month and then you throw it away. But that's virgin paper. So there's no point doing poster competition
and say save tree when you're doing it on paper. You want to do it? You don't want to use paper or on a cardboard. So the concept has to be there. There's no point being a hypocrite. We all are, but try not to be as much as possible. All right? The green is for biodegradables. So we had somebody else who was handling the composting. So everything, every classroom had these 3 bits. And the red, Lal Mane Khatra, we collaborated with a rat picker boy. You see these little boys walking around 10 hours, 12 hours, picking up those plastic which you have carelessly thrown because you don't want to take it home to your husband. They pick it up and they sell it. But they can only sell it in your film also when the weight of the bag is 60 kg, 60 kg. So how do you bring them in? So the collaboration was, he goes to school in the morning, comes back to my school at 4 o'clock. By that time, all the cleanup stuff has been done, non-biodegradable collected. He picks up what he is useful to him, bags it, sells it. No charity, mutualism. I scratch my your back. So that's the way. So you can bring it up like that. I'll finish that. You can bring it up, but if you want to do it, you create your own story. Don't expect some superhero teacher coming and teaching you, and then only you will learn. Thank you.
That was really an amazing way to do this, and I'm sure should be available after the panel discussion. And I think, yeah, doing it on your own, taking that standalone spirit of starting something and sustaining it. Starting is still easier, sustaining it becomes difficult. So thank you so much for that. And I hope we can interact with you after the panel. Yeah. So any other comments, questions? Yes, please.
Hello everyone. So I'm from JNU and I'm doing a master in environmental science. So I want to talk about the education system. Like there in our school, like everyone is like what to say. This is one of the most reputed university in JNU, and everyone like what to say in paper in exam in paper if we are studying environment science, so they will score well. Whatever you ask, they will just score well in exam. But when it comes to practical, we are celebrating Earth Day, and me and my friend, we just buy this one. We just sew it and we paint it and we try to send it. We want to do this like carry your own bags and carry your own cups and all these things. And then after that, we did a cleanliness drive, but no one came. And there are around 37 students and around like 25 staff. And we want them to join us for the cleanest drive of the campus, but no one bothered to come because the next day we have exams. So it's like everyone is into this exam, like marks. But when it comes to practical, no one bothered. And we are studying environment and we know if we throw plastic, what will happen? We know about it. But when it put to practical, like they'll just eat something and they'll just throw it away. They don't care. And then I don't understand, like, are we really getting what we are studying? It's like, I don't know, I feel like we are all stuck in this like toxic loop. So I just want to say, how can we change this? Like, thank you.
Very difficult question.
Can I attempt? So this is where the intergenerational aspect comes in for me, right? So so I was very close to my grandpa, right? And one thing which my grandmom never liked about my grandpa was that he never wants to dispose of anything, right? He just keeps on hoarding all the things that he wants. So there's this one cupboard hoarded with all the old things which no one is allowed to take a look at. Even when you talk about the old rappers, he was such an interesting person that he used to never even dispose those multi-layered packets, right? He used to keep some of the other papers folded inside that packet so that everyone doesn't, you can't find that, right? So no one really taught my grandpa, and that's something which I feel is being passed on to me. And my sister and my mom is again having a tough time with me that you don't throw things. My drawers are filled with stuff, right? My cupboards are again filled with stuff. So the fact that of consumption attitude, right? We consume so many things and then we end up disposing, right? That is something which has been a change in me, right? So that is something which has been passed on from my grandpa, that I don't need to consume more, right? It's better to save it. Maybe sometime else we may like to use it, right? So connecting it through the family, within the family, as Richard also just shared a few moments back. So that can be one of the ways of setting an example and tell them, hey, listen, this is something which is worth doing, right? So for me, saving stuff and not throwing them is worth doing, right? I end up using things which I need without even buying or consuming more, right? So I have no consumption on that, right? So I think that's where one of the things can be looked at with the larger issue, right? So the larger issue still persists of the attitude, but the intergenerational dialogue, as within me and my grandfather, helped me to drilled into me that I'm not supposed to throw it off so easily. So I hope I answered a bit of it.
Thank you. Richard, would you like to take that difficult question?
Yes, I mean, I think this is almost the question is, how do you change mindsets and behaviors? Because you won't do it just by telling people a lot of stuff that makes a lot of sense. It comes back to the point I'll keep insisting on, is that we have to engage with the emotional human being. And that means that there's a lot of work to be done in schools around actively promoting an awareness of our own emotional structures and drivers. And if you study a little bit, it's worth studying a little bit of everything in life. I've studied a little bit on motivational theory. I'm not an expert, but motivational theory will talk about intrinsic motivations and extrinsic motivations. And the difference, really, to make that slightly simpler, is that an extrinsic motivation comes from the outside, and it's usually about compliance and laws and money. If I do this, I get paid, or if I don't do this, I get punished. And those can be quite powerful. Fear is a very powerful extrinsic motivator. And then there are intrinsic motivators, the things that I do this and it kind of comes from inside. And those are built on our personal value systems. And I sometimes fear that in schools, we're so keen to fill people's head with stuff that we undervalue the promotion of character development. And character development is structured around value systems, and putting value systems at the heart of our learning, rather than as something we do on one day of the week. So I think it's helpful to think about intrinsic and extrinsic motivators.
Thank you. So we have one more question. Yeah, if we can go through that quickly, then just one last round of comments from the panelists.
Question and a comment. Relevance. So I'm definitely from the older generation, but I've been through 13 years in India. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on children to excel in exams, get into colleges. So at some point, in the 20 things that part of them are able to achieve, how does this aspect sort of be relevant to what they're trying to achieve? And while I agree with what you said about, starting from within, I do believe that schools are not going far enough to create platforms which attract the best talent and the best students to this side of the house. So are we giving them a platform that can create an avenue for them to achieve their academic ambitions? So whether it is, competitions or forums, or even making environmental studies of not a sixth subject, is this something that they can really pursue in order to achieve their dreams and goals in life? And some of the sort of not as altruistic things that we all need to deal with in terms of survival. You gotta get to college, you gotta get a good job. How does this help you do that? And I think over time, once you're exposed to it, and you do it like one of the students in front, once you do it, you've got the part and you will always do it. But I think there needs to be relevant to some of the other stresses that students face.
Which is also what the two young ladies here commented on. But your other question on, okay, what platform should school be providing to students? Okay, another, just last one more.
Very good afternoon. Myself, Professor Rajiv from Service Ministry, that is over here. Regarding that, curious value education, emotional stress, career-based pursuance, and materialistic double standard things. We are talking about the environment and our works and deeds are different after the sometimes conference. For that things, the best answer as per my learning is what I saw when I was in college level curriculum based value based education, that is human values and professional ethics, one of the compulsory course in AKTU. So they have 4 steps for BTech, first year, second year, third year, fourth year. That means.
Sorry to interrupt you, but could you just talk it a little?
So that means values. What is the purpose of human life? That should be universal, and our way of pursuance may be different. So in that way, if the values will be able to integrate with our environment, it will be better. So in that way, that is going on, and I heard that to the school level from the 6th standards, it is in the process to incorporate in the.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be rude, but I have to cut it short there. But we do get your point, and I think the panelists have mentioned it, that the value-based education is important.
It is there in India.
Yes. Can we just ask? Yeah. So just your question on platforms and avenues school can provide. Susan, can you take that? And I think then we'll just wrap up. Before that, I must, we have a request. We have a Google form in which we want responses to some questions that we have for you. So we have that on a scanner. So if you could just scan it with your phones and then just sort of answer those questions, that would really be great. We hope to probably come out with, an output from this discussion and have all of you as signatories or names on that. So it will be really great to hear your opinion on those questions. Yeah. So Susan, the last word.
Could you just repeat what your question was? I didn't quite get.
So the question really was, so one, yes, students have this pressure to make a career. So they have enough pressure and burden studying other subjects. But she also said that schools probably don't provide enough avenues and platforms for students to engage in environmental practices or projects. So how can schools?
That actually furthers their academic ambitions.
In the way that it can further their academic ambitions. I don't even know whether those two should be compulsorily together, but your opinion on that.
See, what happens is, that's why I said, all these kind of skills and whatever activities they need to do as experiential learning, whether it is interacting with the community and learning, or doing different kinds of projects along, collaborating with people and doing projects based on sustainability and environment education, has to be done right from your lower classes itself. And there has to be I keep on repeating that skill development has to come in, and let them talk about all the different strands of environment education that are there, and maybe the school can take a call in order to do which are the things that we would do, so that we can get these kind of skills in our children, and then they can assess them based on that. So that becomes not only a kind of a mark-oriented thing, but it should be something that is practiced in the school. Now, Nita spoke very nicely about waste segregation. Now, that waste segregation has to start in your school itself, and that is a practice that will take them right through life, whether it is water conservation, whether it is energy conservation, whether it is biodiversity. Again, trips to these kind of places where Samarrth was talking about, where they really come in touch with people in the community. Now, these are, again, things that they can have a kind of a credit system. And from what I have heard about the NCF 2023, there is leverage for these kind of projects to take place in school. So the new format that is there, which will come in, we should be able to do something. And all these things can actually, whatever you say, can happen only till class 8. Then by then the child should have acquired all this, and that love to preserve the planet should be there and conserve the planet, so that at 9 and 10 they probably will have something that is related to environment, maybe as 1 or 2 projects that are there, or something that they, some innovation that they have done. In fact, I have in my colony where I stay, I had a class 12 child who started last year, a bin that is put up there to collect empty medicine strips. And he sends it for recycling. And the entire colony actually has, now it's become a practice. So everyone, and that is still continuing. So he started it as a small project, and which is now, he's found a solution. Okay, so I think schools have to take on the responsibility. Teachers, B.Ed colleges must instill the science of climate change, as well as activities they can do that will have an impact on the children. The teachers have to be trained first. They have to have that attitude and a love for the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm not going to attempt to summarize the rich discussions we've had here, but I think something that really resonated with me, and also to the young lady who asked the question from JNU, I think it's really about, if something is troubling you that much, and we've heard this from all the panelists, you know, whether the girls who are working with the eco clubs or Vimlendu who started something, not having double standards, but having the passion, as Richard said, and Samarrth who's doing so well on his project besides his studies. So it's about being able to have that passion, and that it troubles you that much to start something on your own and then sustain it, build those partnerships, right? And make it relevant. So
Can I just come in? Can I just come in for a moment, Shilpanjali?
Yeah.
See, she spoke about multi-pack packaging, chips packets. Now, there are people, in fact, that we do that in the colony as well. Maybe an initiative in JNU, she can start, you collect them. There are people, a community in Pune that actually makes bags out of them. There is this thing that collects only poly bags, which come as Amazon and Myntra and all those bags, where they use them as seedling bags. So you need to find out these places, take the initiative. You have to take the initiative. A group of you'll find like-minded people and then form a small group. Even if it is just 2 of y'all, you will be able to do it. Right. You will find a lot of people hopping onto the bandwagon the minute they know it.
Yes.
But you have to, that strength of conviction should be there.
Yes. So thank you so much. With that, I thank all the panelists for their time and for all their thoughts. And I think we'll just give them a memento at the end. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
If you remember, we started with the game, throw the word, right? So now that we're about to end, and we've had a very fruitful session, we've heard from the panelists and we've heard about quite a lot of things. So like we did in the beginning, we will do it again. So what comes to your mind when I say the word environmental education? Interdisciplinary approach, passion, responsibility, consistency, yes. Accessibility. Start from your own. Yeah. So what comes to your mind when you hear the word intergenerational dialogue? Engage. Ideas. Anything else? Discussion. Wow. empower experiences. Certainly we almost have no repetition from the first time that we did this before we started the panel. And this is just to show a little bit that how much conversations like these can enrich our own experiences, but also when we bounce ideas with each other, we can reach to possible places within our own minds, which isn't possible by ourselves. So yeah, thank you so much. We'll move to the memento and close.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Swechha.
Thank you. So just a little moment, Susan, I'm sorry, you won't be getting one.
That's okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. Round of applause.
Thank you.
That's okay. It's really far off. Richard.
I'll come your way. I'll come your way.
Wait, wait.
Yes, okay.
Thank you very much. And I especially want to thank the teachers and people who accompany the students and everybody else for their time. Thank you. Yeah, the scanner is there for all who want to please fill out the Google form with your responses to those 3 questions. We would love to. As Vishnu says, take a picture of this and share it amongst your friends. We have more responses. Thank you very much. And there's some tea outside. I think. It was great. Yeah, did you enjoy it? I hope so. It's great.
Yes.
Can the babies take a picture? Yeah.
They have picture there.
No.
Okay, सारे तो लिए हैं आपने. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Very good.
Thanks for
Chalo, see you, Shubham.
Yeah.
Bye bye. Good. Yes. Yes.
Yes.